Hi y'all. I am terrified. I am having a really hard time in my body with anxiety and the state of the world. I am really lonely and terrified. So I'm going to start this one out with some poems. Kind of just flipping through. This is a book called Soft Magic by Upile Chisala. And it's from my friend Stephanie, who sent it because they love me and I love her. Okay. Trust me. I know how to fix myself. How to mend and burn and bend and shape. I know how to make myself something new. So don't stay around out of pity. Leave me broken and I will find my own way back to wholeness. Here's another one. I am still learning to make language out of my pain, to write out all the ache. I am still teaching my fragile and my strong that they can coexist. Even my mother's hands are tired. You can almost tell when she hugs you. She leans in and rests her fingers on your back, sharing a teeny weight in secret, unburdening just a little. Raised in a home of sharp tongues, you know enough words to start a fire with your mouth, but somehow you have chosen softness, or softness has chosen you. Darling, women like you are known to carry war between your teeth and still manage to slide soft words off your tongue. You baffle them with how you fit both battle and peace in your body. Kind of. Maybe I can do this. Okay, I'm pretty sure we might get through all of it this time. We'll see. I don't know. But this is chapter 14. Forgiveness begins with the self. That's hard. This chapter is a reworking of an article of mine that was published in Recovering, November 1991. I wrote it because I was appalled at how much pressure my clients were getting to just forgive and forget. Consequently, many of them were diving right back into denial and minimizing all the trauma that they had endured. This recovery process then screeched to a halt as their inner critics denigrated them for being so unforgiving. Because this article was helpful to my clients and because I received so much positive feedback from the recovery community, I was motivated to write my first book, The Tao of Fully Feeling, Harvesting Forgiveness Out of Blame. This book explores the complex subject of forgiving past abusers in considerable depth. In this vein, it asserts that some parents were so destructive to us that they are not forgivable. There's a lot of shaming, dangerous, and inaccurate guidance put out about forgiveness in both the recovery community and in many spiritual teachings. Many survivors of dysfunctional families have been injured by the simplistic black and white advice that they must embrace a position of being totally and permanently forgiving in order to recover. Unfortunately, those who take the advice to forgive abuses that they have not fully grieved, abuses that are still occurring, and or abuses so heinous they should and could never be forgiven, often find themselves getting nowhere in the recovery process. In fact, the possibility of attaining real feelings of forgiveness is usually lost when there is a premature cognitive decision to forgive. This is because premature forgiveness mimics the defenses of denial and repression. It keeps unprocessed feelings of anger and hurt about childhood trauma out of awareness. Real forgiveness is quite distinct from premature forgiveness. It is almost always a byproduct of effective grieving, and no amount of thought, intention, or belief can bring it into being without a great deal of emotional work. Conversely, belief systems that are not open to the possibility of forgiveness sometimes block our access to forgiving feelings, even when such feelings are present. It might be that the healthiest cognitive position concerning forgiveness is an attitude that allows for the possibilities of its occurrence on the other side of extensive grieving. This attitude works best if it includes the condition that feelings of forgiveness will not be forced or falsely invoked to cover up any unresolved feelings of hurt or anger. In this vein, it is crucial to understand that certain types of abuse are so extreme and damaging to the victim that forgiveness is simply not an option. Examples of this include sociopathy, conscious cruelty, and many forms of scapegoating and parental incest. When forgiveness has substance, it is felt palpably in the heart and is usually an expansion of the emotion of compassion. Compassion is certainly not always the same thing as forgiveness, but is usually the experience within which forgiveness is born. Often this happens via an intermediate process, where having grieved our childhood losses substantially, we occasionally find ourselves considering the extenuating circumstances that contribute to our parents raising us in neglectful or abusive ways. Most commonly, these extenuating circumstances revolve around two issues. First, our parents often parented us in ways that blindly replicated the ways that they were parented. And second, they were often supported in their dysfunctional parenting by the social norms and values of their times. Nonetheless, it is once again vitally important that we do not jump into considering their mitigating circumstances until we have significantly worked through the traumatic consequence that their abuse and abandonment had on us. When considering our parents' extenuating circumstances, we may sometimes get that our parents were also quite victimized, and we may consequently find ourselves on occasion feeling sorry or sorrow for them. Sometimes this experience of feeling compassion for them becomes profound enough for us to comprehend how similarly awful and unfair their childhoods were. This feeling-based realization may on occasion morph into feeling some forgiveness for them. However, unless this feeling of forgiveness for our parents is grounded in compassion for ourselves, the above process is empty mental exercise. Even worse, it may become a great hindrance to doing the fundamental angering work of real recovery. Premature forgiveness will prohibit us from showing the inner child that she had the right to be angry about her parents' cold-hearted abandonment of her. It'll stop us from helping her to express and release those old, angry feelings. Premature forgiveness will also inhibit the survivor from reconnecting with his instinctual self-protectiveness. He may never learn that he can now use his anger, if necessary, to stop present-day unfairness. His real forgiveness is primarily a feeling. It is, like all other feelings, ephemeral. It is never complete, never permanent, and never a done deal. Forgiveness is governed by the dynamic nature of all human feeling experience. Our emotional experience is a frequently changing, unchoosable, and unpredictable process of the psyche. No emotional state can be induced to persist as a permanent experience. As sad as this may be, as much as we may like to deny it, as much as it continuingly frustrates us, and as much as we are pressured to control and pick our emotions, they are still, by definition of the human condition, and largely outside the providence of our wills. Forgiveness, then, like love, remains a human feeling experience that is only temporarily ours. However, when we thoroughly vent our angry feelings about the past, feelings of forgiveness come more accessible. When we learn how to grieve ourselves out of abandonment flashbacks, we reemerge into a feeling of belonging to and loving the world. Moreover, when we learn to effectively grieve through present-day hurts, we quite naturally move back into loving feelings. As our emotional flexibility matures, lost feelings of love and forgiveness return so reliably that they can become consciously chosen values. Thus, when I occasionally feel hurt by proven intimates, I may not be able to immediately invoke loving or forgiving feelings toward them, but I know that with sufficient communication and non-abusive venting, I will eventually return to an appreciative experience of them. As much as I can forgive myself, that much can I forgive others. What I often forgive in others is an old pain of mine, a release from the disgust of self-hate. It is an old vulnerability of mine that I now love and welcome like a bird with a broken wing. Shame and self-hate did not start with me, but with all my heart. I dine that they will stop with me. I will do unto myself as I would have others do unto me. Carol Ruth Knox wrote a poem about loving feelings with the hide-and-seek game they seem to play with us. It comes and goes, doesn't it? Sometimes related to people and how they treat us, and sometimes not. Sometimes related to the moon, to personal finances, to the questions of life, to nothingness, to everything, to the seasons, the time, to the food we ate, to... It would appear as if the art of loving is not whether you love or not. We all do in our present way, but whether you trust that when love leaves, it has a reason and it will return again. Always. We humans are instruments of love by design. So is the whole universe. think this is going to be nice. I want to get to it. When love blows across us, naturally we sing a love song. And when there is no love, wind to blow, though it leaves us strange and willow-like. Love has gone to an empty field where it fills its wind sails again, so that it might return and blow across our all too hungering instruments. One more time. What shall we do while we wait? We shall weep, of course. Something as lovely as love leaves a gaping hole when gone. We shall remember love is in our hearts and wait tenderly and compassionately with ourselves as we wander and question and doubt until we remember. Love always returns. Hoo-wee! My goodness. Coming in with the hard hitters here, chapter 14. Chapter 15. Bibliotherapy and the community of books. Oh, the loving community of books. Almost as amazing as the community of land and plants and mushrooms. The community of books. Bibliotherapy is a term that describes the very real process of being positively and therapeutically influenced by what you read. As stated earlier, when it is at its most powerful, bibliotherapy is also relationally healing. It can rescue you from CPTSD feeling of abject isolation and alienation. Bibliotherapy can play an enormous role in enhancing recovery from CPTSD. I usually find that my clients who make the most progress are those who augment their therapy sessions with reading homework, self-prescribed or recommended by me. This is especially true for those who further augment their reading with journaling about their cognitive and emotional processes to what they have read. I believe that journaling helps build the new psychological and neuronal brain circuitry that occurs as we effectively meet our developmentally arrested childhood needs. For more on journal therapy, read the section on verbal ventilating in chapter 5 of my first book. Bibliotherapy is especially helpful for people like me who grew up in dangerous social environments replete with adults who offered little but criticism, intimidation, and disgust. It equally serves those whose early lives were devoid of adulthood, of adults who could be looked to for safe support and guidance. It was not until later in life, after I had quite a few years of group and individual therapy, that I realized that my journey of recovering had actually begun decades before my formal therapy. It began with all the therapeutic reading and writing I had instinctively gravitated to. I unconsciously sought the help of others in many spiritual and psychological self-help books that I was intuitively drawn to. Without really understanding it, I gained invaluable insights about how to improve the ways I treat myself and others. Just as importantly, I subliminally realized that there were a number of good, safe, wise, and helpful adults out there who could be trusted, and who had a great deal of wise and kind guidance to offer. I remember my first deeply emotional experience of entering the community of books. I was in the library resentfully slogging through the poetry section trying to find a book for my homework in high school English. I was up to W and found nothing that remotely interested me when I came to an anthology with the picture of a very complex-looking old man on its cover. Walt Whitman. His epic poems, Song of Myself and Song of the Open Road, thrilled me and changed my life. He became my hero and the first adult role model that had something useful and important to teach me. His ideas became raison d'etre and gave me a hopeful plan for what I could do when I finally escaped my family. Over time, the authors in my community of books seemed like a small tribe of elders who I imagined as people who would have empathy for me if I were to meet them. Eventually, when I achieved something of critical mass of this awareness, I managed to take a frightening leap into the water of therapy. I lucked out and got a good enough therapist to help me take steps in my healing that I could not manage on my own. So here are some authors and their works who have been especially helpful to me on my journey. These are wise aunts and uncles I never biologically had. Especially recommended readings. Alice Miller, The Drama of the Gifted Child. Gravitson Bowden, Guide to Recovery. Great, short, powerful overview of recovery, oriented to recovering from alcoholic parents, but very relevant to having traumatizing parents. Read this if you can only read one book. L. Davis and E. Bass, The Courage to Heal. Classic on recovering from sexual abuse. Jack Cornfield, A Path with Heart, Using Meditation to Increase Self-Compassion. Stephen Levine, Who Dies? Mindfulness and the Radical Self-Acceptance. Sue Johnson, Hold Me Tight. The book, and especially the DVD of the same name, shows how she teaches real couples to use their emotional vulnerability to develop real intimacy and a healthy attachment bond. There's a bunch. I'm going to put them in the description. Cool. Chapter 16, Self-Help Tools. This chapter is composed of 6 toolboxes, each with a set of tools to a different recovery issues. Nonetheless, I still value these lists of indispensable adjuncts to my own journey of recovering. I often hand out these lists to clients at appropriate times in their journey. I also give them to students who attend my classes. I have received a great deal of positive feedback about how helpful they have been to enhancing recovery. My friends and clients whose recovery progresses at the greatest rate are those who supplement their therapy with self-help activities. Those who print out these lists and carry them around or post them in conspicuous place until they are deeply ingrained seem to take a quantum leap in their recovery. I hope that you become immersed in these lists and that they give you the healing support that I have seen so many others receive from them. Here's the poem that I found graffitied on a wall recently. It was signed Hank. How appropriate. Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. Be on watch. There are ways out. There's light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Be on the watch. The gods will offer you chances. Know them. Take them. You can't beat death, but you can beat death in life. Sometimes. And the more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. You are marvelous. The gods wait to delight in you. Conclusion. In conclusion, your progress in recovering from multidimensional wounds of CPTSD. 1. As increasing mindfulness decreases your unconscious 4F acting out. 2. As your critic shrinks. 3. As your brain becomes more user-friendly. 4, as grieving your childhood losses builds your emotional intelligence. 5, as your body relaxes and your mind becomes more peaceful. 5, as your healthy ego matures into a healthy sense of self. 6, as your life narrative becomes self-compassionate and self-affirming. 7, as your emotional vulnerability creates authentic experiences of intimacy. And 8, as you attain good enough, safe relationship. Boy. 6, as your life narrative becomes self-compassionate and self-affirming. That's been an exceptionally difficult one for me to accomplish. Often refuted. Fuck. I hope and pray that much sooner than later you will experience an increasing access to the silver lining I described in Chapter 4. I hope you sense the ongoing resolution of your developmental arrest. I hope you will notice an increase in kindness to yourself and a pride in the beautiful uniqueness of yourself. I hope you become as fierce in your allegiance to yourself as you need to be to feel that you safely belong to the world. I further hope that the benefits of your improved emotional intelligence will bring you at least one intimate relationship where you can ongoingly discover the benefits of safe and multidimensional relating. Toolbox 1, suggested intentions for recovery. Here are normal and safe wants and needs to wish and hope for, to cultivate with mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical energy. As usual, focus on the ones that most appeal to you. Skip the ones that do not feel right for you or that you do not feel ready for. 1. I want to develop a more consistently loving and accepting relationship with myself. I want an increasing capacity for self-acceptance. 2. I want to learn to become the best possible friend to myself. 3. I want to attract into my life relationships that are based on love, respect, fairness, and mutual support. 4. I want to uncover a full, uninhibited self-expression. 5. I want to attain the best possible physical health. 6. I want to cultivate a balance of vitality and peace. 7. I want to attract to myself loving friends and loving community. 8. I want to increase freedom from toxic shame. 9. I want to increase freedom from unnecessary fear. 10. I want rewarding and fulfilling work. 11. I want a fair amount of peace of mind, spirit, soul, and body. 12. I want to increase my capacity to play and have fun. 13. I want to make plenty of room for beauty and nature in my life. 14. I want sufficient physical and monetary resources. 15. I want a fair amount of help, self, human, or divine, to get what I need. 16. I want God's love, grace, and blessing. 17. I want a balance of work, rest, and play. 18. I want a balance of stability and change. 19. I want a balance of loving interaction and healthy self-sufficiency. I want a balance of loving interaction and healthy self-sufficiency. 20. I want a full emotional expression with a balance of laughter and tears. 21. I want a sense of meaningfulness and fulfillment. 22. I want to find effective and non-abusive ways to deal with anger. 23. I want all this for each and every other being. Toolbox 2, Human Bill of Rights. Guidelines for fairness and intimacy. 1. I have the right to be treated with respect. 2. I have the right to say no. 3. I have the right to make mistakes. 4. I have the right to reject unsolicited advice or feedback. 5. I have the right to negotiate for change. 6. I have the right to change my mind or my plans. 7. I have the right to change my circumstances or course of action. 8. I have the right to have my own feelings, beliefs, opinions, preferences, etc. 9. I have the right to protest sarcasm, destructive criticism, or unfair treatment. 10. I have the right to feel angry and to express it non-abusively. 11. I have the right to refuse to take responsibility for anyone else's problems. 12. I have the right to refuse to take responsibility for anyone's bad behavior. 13. I have the right to feel ambivalent and to occasionally be inconsistent. 14. I have the right to play, waste time, and not always be productive. 15. I have the right to occasionally be childlike and immature. 16. I have the right to complain about life's unfairness and injustices. 17. I have the right to occasionally be irrational in safe ways. 18. I have the right to seek healthy and mutually supportive relationships. 19. I have the right to ask friends for a modicum of help and emotional support. 20. I have the right to complain and verbally ventilate in moderation. 21. I have the right to grow, evolve, and prosper. This is an interesting amalgamation, I think that's the word, works there, of toolboxes at the end, which part of me suggests, if you enjoyed hearing the reading of this book, to look up the toolboxes in the back. They're probably easily Googleable. Okay, I think I'll go through this last one and then we'll wrap it up. Toolbox 3. Suggested internal responses to the common critic attacks. The attack of the critic often operates below the radar of self-awareness. Unless we can identify them, we are at their mercy and helpless to deconstruct them. Once we learn to recognize inner critic attacks, the simple technique of thought stopping and thought substitution are powerful tools in short-circuiting the critic. There are two categories of attack. Perfectionism attacks, fueled by toxic shame, create chronic self-hate and self-flagellation. Endangerment attacks, fueled by fear, create chronic hypervigilance and anxiety. Perfectionism attacks. 1. Perfectionism. My perfectionism arose as an attempt to gain safety and support in my dangerous family. Perfection is a self-persecutory myth. I do not have to be perfect to be safe or loved in the present. I'm letting go of relationships that require perfection. I have a right to make mistakes. Mistakes do not make me a mistake. Every mistake or mishap is an opportunity to practice loving myself in the places I have never been loved. 2. All or none, black or white thinking. I reject extreme or overgeneralized descriptions, judgments, or criticism. Statements that describe me as always or never, this or that, are typically grossly inaccurate. Self-hate, self-disgust, and toxic shame. I commit to myself. I am on my side. I am a good enough person. I refuse to trash myself. I turn shame back into blame and disgust and externalize it to anyone who shames my normal feelings and foibles. As long as I'm not hurting anyone, I refuse to be shamed for normal emotional responses like anger, sadness, fear, and depression. I especially refuse to attack myself for how hard it is to completely eliminate self-hate habits. 4. Micromanagement. Worrying, obsessing, looping, over-futurizing. I will not repetitively examine details over and over. I will not endlessly second-guess myself. I cannot change the past. I forgive all my past mistakes. I cannot make the future perfectly safe. I will stop hunting for what could go wrong. I will not try to control the controllable, the uncontrollable. I will not micromanage myself or others. I will work in a way that is good enough, and I accept the existential fact that my efforts sometimes bring desired results and sometimes they do not. 5. Unfair, devaluing comparisons to others or to your most perfect moments. I refuse to compare myself unfavorably to others. I will not compare my insides to their outsides. I will not judge myself for not being at peak performance all the time. In a society that pressures us into acting happily all the time, I will not get down on myself for feeling bad. 6. Guilt. Feeling guilty does not mean I am guilty. I refuse to make my decisions and choices out of guilt. Sometimes I need to feel the guilt and do it anyway. In the inevitable instance when I am inadvertently hurt someone, I will apologize, make amends, and let go of my guilt. I will not apologize over and over. I am no longer a victim. I will not accept unfair blame. Guilt is sometimes camouflaged as fear. I'm afraid, but I am not guilty or in danger. 7. Shoulding. I will substitute the words want to for should, and only follow this imperative if it feels like I want to, unless I am under legal, ethical, or moral obligation. 7. Overproductivity, workaholism, busyaholism. I'm a human being, not a human doing. I will not choose to be perpetually productive. I am more productive in the long run when I balance work with play and relaxation. I will not try to perform at 100% all the time. I subscribe to the normalcy of vacillating along a continuum of efficiency. Harsh judgments of self and others. Name-calling. I will not let the bullies and the critics of my early life win by joining and agreeing with them. I refuse to attack myself or abuse others. I will not displace the criticism and blame that rightfully belongs to my original critics onto myself or current people in my life. I care for myself. The more solitary, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself. Jane Eyre. Endangerment tactics. 10. Drasticizing, catastrophizing, and hypochondricizing. I feel afraid, but I am not in danger. I am not in trouble with my parents. I refuse to scare myself with thoughts and pictures of my life deteriorating. No more homemade horror movies and disaster flicks. No more turning teeny ailments into tales of dying. 11. Negative focus. I will stop anxiously looking for, over-noticing, and dwelling on what might go wrong or what might be wrong for me or life around me. Right now I will notice, visualize, and enumerate my accomplishments, talents, and qualities, as well as the many gifts life offers me, like music, film, food, beauty, colors, books, nature, friends, etc. 12. Time urgency. I'm not in danger. I do not need to rush. I will not hurry unless it is a true emergency. I'm learning to enjoy doing my daily activities at a relaxed pace. 13. Disabling performance anxiety. I am reducing procrastination by reminding myself not to accept unfair criticism or perfectionist expectations from anyone. Even when afraid, I will defend myself from unfair criticism. I won't let fear make my decisions. 14. Perseverating about being attacked. Unless there are clear signs of danger, I will stop my projection of past bullies, critics onto others. The majority of my fellow human beings are peaceful people. I have legal authorities to aid in my protection if threatened by the few who aren't. I'm not sure that's true. I know it said it earlier in the book too. I wanted to believe that, of course, like anyone, but probably not going to be leaning into that. I invoke thoughts and images of my friends' love and support. Okay, one more poem. no one called you brave lately, I will. You are fighting sadness with everything you've got, and for that you are mighty. Heart, tell me when you are ready. Are you sure you don't carry the ocean in your chest, mountains in your eyes, the sky in your hips, because you are starting to feel like the whole world to me? You seldom know how to share yourself. You are used to men half loving you and not saying please. So when he was all knees at your kiss, all plea in your arms, you did not understand that a man could coil so pretty and ask you so sweetly for a portion, for a place in your world. But darling, your love has always been worth the work of the heart. Sadly, when the ocean is your border, you must make do. Home is far, and your hunger for it might make your bones ache. So you study supermarkets till you know where to find goat meat and cassava and cornmeal and peanut flour and okra and dried fish and pumpkin leaves, food that jogs your memory. After all, you must make do. I am sorry. Home is far, and you are hungry for it. And the stubborn ocean won't disappear. This last one's for Jordan. Little boys with sunshine in their giggles are being mistaken for men because their bodies were built like those of warriors. Sweet babies, you are still growing into your bones. You are little, you are loved. I am mine every time. Thanks for listening, y'all.